Howdy doody, ladies and gents. It's time for part 3 of this daily where we're talking all about this idea of replenishment compositions and how they're sort of changing over time. There's a really good question in the chat in between parts 2 and 3 during the break when someone said, okay, so I get this notion of a Ling Ultra player trying to transition into more Broodlords. But how do I know when he's going from one to the other? What's nice about the way TaeJa and most Terrans are playing is that they max out with the Marauder, Marine, Tank medevac composition, like no Vikings, no Thors, no Ghosts, nothing else. Just the real basic stuff quite early, and they just start attacking a lot. If a player sticks with Ling Ultralisk, then you have some pretty even exchanges, you have some difficulty making headway. The instant he begins making this transition, you instantly start to shove down bases. We'll actually look at that right now as I come back to 20 minutes. Up here, we see in the unit composition, just Ling, Ultra, and Fester. This is when there's a Zergling counterattack down here. This expansion starts to get weak and die because we don't have the rest of our army here. Corruptors trying to make their transition. I'm going to move up a little bit more. TaeJa decides he's going to push up to this expansion. No, he's trying to work his way around. Again, we see there's the Broodlords and Corruptors taking up a lot of the supply. So small engagements like this become easy, and suddenly this expansion is just easy pickings. There's not even any resistance. It's during this transitionary period that we get a lot of opportunities as Terran. So I'm going to come back here, where we just are seeing the Marauder production get kicked into gear. And I think this is another nice transition. I mean, Stephano hasn't really hit Broodlord and Fester at all. But going Ling, Ultra, Infester, and then throwing in Banelings is a kind of faster late-game transition. But we were talking about this expansion, securing this expansion. If Zerg's worried about securing this expansion, as we saw him doing earlier on, he should be getting more Ling, Ultra, instead of more Broodlords. But now, it clearly looks like Stephano's thinking, hey, I got that expansion defended, no problem. So, I can begin making Corruptors. Notice how occupied TaeJa is. He's currently very occupied with time. So we see a couple of Broodlords get produced somewhere. I don't know, you can see them on the production tab. Oh, there they are. I think this is like a total error. It is the easiest way to accidentally lose a bunch of Broodlords. For no real goal, or for no real purpose. I mean, you're going to have to pull the Lings back to be able to defend these Broodlords, because if you don't, just lose the Broodlords. But still, the notion of securing this position and taking this orbital command works niftily. So I'm going to come back to right here again. So we're making the Marauders, pretty bluntly because we see a huge early hive tech army. We see a lot of Infestors, a lot of Ultras. Now we could get tanks, Thors, Vikings. Probably not a ton of medevacs, maybe 2 or something like that. But this is, what was I going to say? Yeah, but that's about all you want to do with the medevac count. So, okay, we have all these options ahead of us. We're going to see the exact same thing out of TaeJa again. Oh yeah, there are 2 more medevacs. We're going to see the exact same thing out of TaeJa again. Once he really starts to kill off a lot of this mid-game stuff, a lot of these Ultras, a lot of these Infestors, and the instant the Broodlords kind of go onto the down on that count, he's suddenly just going to swing into all cheap, fast unit production. Thor, Marine, Viking are the big ones. Look at this. All Marine Viking. Has plenty of Marauders already. And is just literally going into pure aggressive mode. Again, there's one of 3 situations that a Zerg is going to be in. One is that he's going to have to go Ling, Infester, Ultra. That's what all the Marines are for. 2 is that he's going to be, the Marauders are for. 2, he's going to be going for this Ling Ultra into Broodlord, which is why we have this emphasis on Marines. Or he's going all Broodlord, straight up, in which case we just kill off an expansion. So we'll list all the fast mobile stuff once we're finally done defending, but more importantly, once we have finally reduced his composition down. Here we have some really nice micro, and we get a free expansion. And a lot of this is because the damage that Stephano sustained was pretty big. I actually want to come back to here and look at the Stephano replenishment cam. The Stephano replenishment cam. Once this sort of moment happens, we lose a lot of that. This is sort of one of the reasons why you just don't get aggressive with Broodlords in small numbers. Notice that what we're seeing right here is TaeJa showing us loud and clear why we're emphasizing this win-on-ground army, why we're emphasizing tanks and marauders during this transitionary period. If we're emphasizing tanks and marauders, then when we get against a composition like this, Stephano's actually in a transitionary period. He has some Lings, some Ultras, not a lot of Broodlord Infestor. Stephano really should be having tons of Lings and Ultras right now to kill off this expansion, to threaten this, to make sure these two bases are secure, and then transition. But look at TaeJa. Has a crush on the ground mixture. Only 32 Marines. But as long as he can crush on the ground with 2 tanks, 20 Marauders, just crushes on ground, hitting Stephano right in the middle of this transition to more Broodlords. Very sexy. So Stephano loses this whole army. Banelings kill off a lot of stuff, but again, now we are committed to go Ling, Ultra, Baneling, Infestor. Still very hard for TaeJa. Ugh! No, the coffee's wearing off. I must drink yet more coffee. Backing up again. Okay. So, Stephano's choice of composition is fairly clear. Ling Ultra, with some Infestors. If we're getting big on army, or we're in desperate situations, we can add on more Banelings, but we really can't afford to get any more new compositional stuff until we secure this expansion. Damn it, Tristan. Damn it. Don't message me during my daily. I bet all of you checked your Skype just now. Haha. Yes. Okay. What about TaeJa? What's TaeJa's composition? Well, he wants to hold these bases. His opponent's stuck on Ling Ultra Infestor. Suddenly the tanks make a resurgence, because we need to actually control space. All before we were on this attack plan. Attack, 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 attack. Attack because Zerg was on 5 bases and we were on 4. But now we're winning in bases. Let's get some damn static defense up, man. It's back to this mid-game. Remember in the usual mid-game we go Marine tank? We control space that way? Oh, by the way, this hurts. This hurts to watch. This hurts to watch. Even so, look at what we're going to see TaeJa do. Some drops, just because drops are good in late game. The crush on ground composition, with plenty o' tank. We're just defending. Look at this. We even have siege tanks up. We're spreading out. Nothing aggressive about our positioning. These sorts of things, where this expansion is really vulnerable. Again, if we just draw the line, drawing it right like that. Why? Because the other army is there, so we just draw a line through our army that faces his. This expansion is vulnerable. That's okay, because we're denying the more valuable Zerg expansion here. This is actually a defensive maneuver. This is not an aggressive. This isn't necessarily trying to kill this off, because this is just so easy to thwart. This is just try to protect this. That's very clearly super vulnerable. So at this moment, this is about as early as Zerg would want to be transitioning back to that Broodlord phase. Because the game is about even, we're not really terrified to get in an engagement with him, with his Ling Ultra army, as long as we're sieging up in advance. And we're still seeing this theme of de-emphasizing Marines, 4 Marines, 2 Marauders, 3 Siege Tanks. So if I actually had to summarize the way that the Marine composition is behaving, after we have killed off a lot of his Ling Ultra, we flood with just Marines. Whenever we start to feel like we're after a big battle, even if we have the upper hand or not, we just freaking flood Marines. Unless there's some Ultralists out on the map still. Just flood, 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 really ramp up the aggression. And then when we sort of see that we can't really break through, we start getting a lot more Marauders in there. Vikings sometimes if need be, but generally a lot of Marauders. And when we really think that we've finally thwarted his Broodlord threat and we're back to really low numbers, that's when we begin replenishing our tank count. Tanks were only really produced when TaeJa's supply was dropping close to 100. So as we just wrap this game up, TaeJa has not really ever had that many Vikings all game long. He's been emphasizing these ground beater units. Tanks, Marauders, thors. And after just laying into Stephano, in fact, a Terran player who's playing like this is just trying to leap on the Zerg whenever there's the instant that the Zerg transitions to Broodlords. If Zerg was transitioning to Broodlords right now, Stephano would be playing a lot faster with his units, killing off a lot more, because there's just so much less defense for the Zerg. And actually, the real weakness that Stephano had all game long is the fact that he was trying to do these transition to Broodlords when he didn't actually have control. That is exactly what TaeJa's not doing. Stephano hit the greatest fungals that will ever be hit ever in that battle. That was actually remarkable. But even though this looks like Stephano's winning, TaeJa's winning by a lot because of this army supply. This is one of the benefits of having mules, but even then, there's not really that many mules. There's, yeah, just 2 at a time. Nice little play by Stephano, using the infested Terrans and stuff. I would talk about the sort of tactics in other dailies, but this one I wanted to focus a lot on the composition of. And part of me is like, oh man, Stephano, you still maybe could win, but he says GG. This is just a near impossible situation to come back from as Stephano when you're being doubled in army supply. I mean, it's pretty easy when you look here. 24 Marines, 6 Marauders, 3 tanks. Unless you hit the fungals from max energy infestors, which they're not. I don't know. There was some debate over this point in the game, but I thought this was a very illustrative example. What I want to do is I want to take questions, because we haven't gotten the chance to do that. Yeah, Markio Choa. Where is your question grabber? Well, starting things off, Kitten Plague wants to talk about how Phyrexian Obliterator is one of his favorite cards. Love Phyrexian Obliterator, man. What a beautifully costed card. It is designed for mono black. So, EMN Giant Gnome says, Day 9 in the late game, Stephano had thousands of minerals but wasn't max. Was he emphasizing small amounts of late game units rather than large amounts of mid game units like Ling Bang and Fester? That's something that I've actually seen TaeJa do a lot. And the coffee's gone. Where he, where TaeJa will just try to remax out as quickly as possible. He even generally on 3 bases has 2 macro hashes, so we'll have 5 hashes total. And I'm getting to be a real fan of that, because if Terran is in a sort of emergency situation, the only real way Terran can stay alive is if he makes a lot of Marines and fire bats. You know, if he makes a lot of Marines. And if he's making a lot of Marines, then, sorry, I'm shuffling cards while I'm doing this. I like shuffling cards. Yeah, if you're making a lot of lings, the only way that the Terran can really stay alive is with a ton of marines, which is again one of the reasons why TaeJa does it. But I like that. I like being able to maintain the aggression and hope to like overwhelm, like get 100 lings up really fast and overrun. But I think that Stephano was sort of overestimating the situation that he was in, comfort-wise. It's very easy to say something like, well, God, I mean, if I'm at 150 food, I don't want to just flood another 50 supply worth of lings. I would much rather do something like build 10 corruptors, 10 broodlords, and start adding on more infestors and ultras and just keep pushing. I much prefer to be able to get up my mega scary late game composition, but I do think that the way that Stephano could have dealt with that better is to really heavily ling, and then ultra, and then sack 40 or 50 lings in a counterattack, and replenish them with a bunch of that stuff. F5. LZ Diahan says, Day 9, why doesn't Terran get mass Raven with all that extra gas? You can get Ravens with all that extra gas. This is something that most Terrans notice, where they're like, look at all that gas I have. What do I do with it? But with TaeJa's style, he's essentially trying to say, you know what? I'm just going to be killing you before you gain any momentum. And if you're devoting all your resources to killing the other guy, then compositionally you're favoring more marines, marauders, vikings, things that aren't as gas heavy. So you sort of can't turn that off. You can't be like, I'm going to go marine marauder, all aggression, but then I'm not going to attack. I'm going to go raven. You need to play defensive. So a lot of times we'll see players do things like make a lot of planetary fortress, marine tank, and just sit on their ass and start stockpiling raven. It's pretty damn freaking hard to get ravens in general, but on huge enough maps you can. But that's the big reason that Terrans don't do it. They have the resources to have ravens right now, but they don't have time to get the ravens if they're being TaeJa style aggressive. I can take two more. From Digitalism, Day 9, what kind of process should a Zerg go through when he finds the Terran is meching? I want to try to relate this question to what we saw today. With a meching player, the meching is one of the most interesting things to be able to exploit the compositions of, because so few Zergs do it right now. If we think of playing against a marine tanking player, what is our experience of the game? It's constant attacking. The Terrans darting all over the place with medevacs and marines and sieging up in the middle and scanning and moving little troops around. It requires a lot of focus and a lot of units right now. That is a lot of units to defend right now. So when we think composition against marine medevac tank, we think things like Ling and Fester into Ultralisk, because at all points that helps us stay alive. And you know that he's going to be attacking at all points. And against mech, people are kind of treating it the same way, but that's incorrect. They're saying things like, yeah, you kind of go like for a lot of Roach Ling, and that's the general good mix, and then later on you want to get blah, I don't know, whatever. But the fact is that mech is freaking slow as hell. So what you can do is you can mess with his composition. Here's a really standard one. I'm going to go all Ling Roach. Just Ling Roach out the ass. I'm going to upgrade the attack upgrades plenty. Not so much on the armor upgrades. Obviously, if you can afford it, get it. But like tons of Ling Roach. What happens? Players will start favoring tanks and Hellions. When you do the attack, when the attack's done, you build 28 Mutalisks. It's not uncommon to actually have enough resources to do that. But you can just sort of mess with whatever composition he has constructed. And likewise, once you build all the mutas and start running around, doing all the harassment, you take more bases. When he's finally done cleaning it up, you've replaced it with 12 Ultralisks. And then you can just flood in and with Ultralisk Ling. Like, that sort of compositional switching is very, very key against an army that's that slow, but hasn't really been done as much. I mean, Stephano does it because he's kind of like better than everyone in the whole universe, but That's a big thing that I would note about the compositional switching. To be aware of that, to do huge violent switches in other directions. You can't really do that against Marine tank because, I mean, the Marine is an all-purpose unit. You can't be like, I surprised him by making a lot of Mutalisks against his Marines. Yeah, that'll work great. That'll work fan-frickin-tastic. Alright, pick a card. Any card. Was this your card? I had a 1 in 52 chance. So, from Endgamero. Says, Day 9 as a Zerg player, when I'm in the late game versus Terran, I many times just can't seem to actually complete my transition into Broodlords. Just because the Terran player makes the units to beat my current army and forces me to build more Ultras or whatever. How would I deal with this? What I would honestly say is that the forward logic is to say something like, I'm going to try to start my Broodlords as early as possible. And at all points in time, you're asking yourself, can I get Broodlords now? And you're trying to get it early and maybe it isn't working. You're trying to get it early and maybe it isn't working, blah, blah, blah. I want to suggest the reverse logic, where you say, I will never stop building Lings and Ultras until they stop really seeming to be able to do anything. Focus on Ling, Ultra, and Fester. Get those 3/3 upgrades out. Get 5 macro hatch on 3 bases. Try to just kill him with the Ling Ultras. And right when you say, damn it, I can't kill him, then go for the Broodlords. By doing that switch, it puts you in the mode of using the Ling, Ultra, and Fester to its maximum potential. So all of a sudden the Terran is saying things like, I keep dying to, or your Terran opponents will say things, dear Endgamero, like, oh man, I just can't seem to deal with this huge flood of Ling, Ultralisk, and Fester. And whenever I finally feel like I'm defended against it, he has Broodlords. That's the field that you want to create for him. So I wouldn't suggest anything like really specific in terms of composition other than that mental shift. And a lot will actually start changing just with that slightly differented attitude. A lot of Protosses were actually doing a similar thing in Protoss vs. Protoss. This is one of the reasons that I'm at least familiar with it anecdotally from my friends, where they were all trying to get their Colossus as early as possible, because the Colossus is like the money unit in the mid-game. And some of them just started to say, screw that, I'm just going to try to kill my opponent as early as I'm going to try to kill my opponent as often as possible with just Blink Stalker. And when it really seems to be losing a lot of steam, then I'll go transition into the Colossus. And they started to have a much higher win rate and still maintain this Colossus lead in the mid-game. So mental shifts, I think, are really useful. Without any further ado, goodbye. Thanks for watching. I'm going to be laddering tomorrow. Hopefully I don't play as god-awfully as I did today. Oh my god, the number of misclicks were hilarious. And even if I do play terribly tomorrow, we'll talk about it in the games. My eye feels very dry. I'm going to go put in my awesome Celluvisk moisturizing drops. Yes. And then I'm going to go. Have a wonderful day. I will see you tomorrow. Cheers.